It sounds ominous.
Sounds ominous, yeah.
So hello everybody. So I'm Joe Glines, and Jackie is the other person talking at the moment. As I'm sure you can imagine, there's 17 participants right now, and if we had everybody unmuted, it could be chaos if we were just all talking at one time. So we start off being muted. Later on, as we go through, we'll unmute near the end, and then people can just, try to be careful not to talk over each other. But the other thing you can do is at any time ask a question in the chat, and one of us will that's good to know that my dad's coming out. One of us will answer, bring it up, pose a question for you, or maybe just unmute you, if depending on how specific of a question it is.
Exactly. So yeah, that's good. Nice to see the number of people. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So just some of the ground rules, right? As you know, be nice when you do ask questions, and try not to talk over people once we get unmuted. Here is a link which I'm going to put it again if you haven't taken it already, just because it doesn't stay static in that, if you joined later, you don't see the link. This is like a 3-question survey to help us understand better of what you'd like to learn going forward. That was my hot string to remind me what I wrote for it. But so that's that. Today we're going to be talking about, we're going to start off with just using functions in general, built-in functions, and then kind of like why you'd want to create your own functions, how to use them, then talk about DLL calls, and then as well of just showing a demo of a script that I use daily, or I would almost say hourly. But all right, so let me, because Jackie and I were talking about it, we were going to try and do this here. I am going to pass him control of my computer, and he's going to delete everything. No, let's hope not. But there you go, Jackie. Hopefully you can drive.
Yeah. I'd say as we were actually looking at functions, we were talking about which built-in function to talk about, and one of them that came up pretty quickly was the substring one. And to kind of get into that, the reason we picked it was because it has a few of the normal things you would expect there to be within a built-in function. You have the parameter to actually pass it something, and for this I'll pass in something easy, string. And sorry, kind of mishit the keyboard there. And this one is often used to kind of take out substrings.
As a specific part, right?
Yeah, exactly. So what I'm going for is I want to grab the middle here, or let's say the third character on. So if I simply say the third one here, and I could pick the length, but if you saw, I can't remember if it actually shows it within this syntax highlighting. Yeah, you have the square brackets here that shows that the length parameter is actually optional. So you could choose to simply just use the 2 first parameters. So a string, and the starting position would be 3, like so. So if we, instead of doing everything else, just try it out. Let's see, I'm gonna save this, Joe. You don't have this saved, so
yeah, just save it there. It's fine.
Yeah, I'll call it test. Save it there. So I'll run this. So as you can see, you start at the 3rd character and get the rest of the string. So now you have ring instead. And if we, instead of having the entire string on to the end, wanted to only have the 2 middle characters, we would instead add the length and say 2 characters in length. 'Length. And by saving that and doing that, You instead see the two middle characters. It's a little small here, but it should be an R and an I. So that's how substring works. It's fairly straightforward, and if you use the help file, well, apparently that didn't pass through. I was trying to use the F1 hotkey.
Oh, you got it. Did it pop open?
This wasn't the way I was going to try and do it, but it doesn't really matter.
Oh, so for people who don't know, this is Site is the editor we're using. I could have also pulled up AHK Studio, which would have even showed you where you are in those parameters as you're passing them, which I really like.
Yeah, it is a nice functionality. It is. Don't seem to be able to double click that for some reason.
Here, why don't you let me take over for a second. So let me just get back to here. Huh.
You have it's because the script is still running, perhaps.
No?
That's a thing I've seen.
Really?
Times. Yeah. The F1 key won't work if SETI has an active process somewhere.
I don't know why it's not launching.
Nah.
Yeah.
Irritating, but still, I wanted to simply open the help file for substring.
Right.
So we could use the online one, or you can use the built-in one.
Here, if AutoHotkey commands. Here we go.
Yeah. So here we have exactly the same thing going on. So as you can see here, you have the return value or the new string, whatever you ask substring to actually return. So you pass it a string or a variable holding a string, or the contents of a file or whatever it might be, as long as it's a string. Then you use the starting post to actually decide where in the string you want to start from. It's to me it's quite self-explaining, but hey, let's go over it anyway. It's no problem. So, and the length again, that's one of the reasons we picked this one, because it has 3 parameters and they are quite self-explaining. So it's a good starting function, and you can easily have stuff that you actually want to do with it. So I don't think there's too much more to go into with this one. Do you have anything for it, Joe?
No, I mean, you know, I think most people on the call are probably at least mid-level anyway, so that was a good introduction.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. I'm glad that we at least showed it. And we had a few more on the slides that you had, Joe, like the trim one, which is one of the ones that you often I don't know if you forget about it, but you may not use it as much as you could because of AutoHotkey's auto trim, which often helps you with white space anyway. So I still see it as a useful one, but I don't remember using it that much. Do you use it often, Joe?
No, I wouldn't say often. I mean, you know, when at work I do a lot of web scraping off of a SharePoint site, and for some reason the text often has white spaces at the end of the character. So I'll use on that just because it's so easy.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say I've used others like substring as an example, or some of the other trim functions like trim right and trim left, if I knew that there might have been a new line feed or whatever at the end of a string, like when you get values out of Excel and stuff. You often have these invisible characters.
Yeah, we're getting some comments in the chat of using substring or regex replace type stuff and clearing out config files from a Cisco router. But yeah, it's just a good example of, I do use substring a lot, and that is one I frequently use.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people actually use it.
Yeah.
It has the needed functionality. I can't remember what else you put on those 3 pointers there.
Trim, round, obviously round. That's another great one, right?
Yeah. I felt that it was good having them there, and I'm pretty sure that people have a good idea of how to use it.
Right.
But round is also one of those that if you grab a value from Excel as an example, using COM or whatever, and you just ask for the value, you often get this.
Yeah, like an 8-digit decimal of zeros. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's 6
okay.
for me normally, something like that. And to kind of get around that, you can use the round function. It's an easy way of doing it, but of course there's ways to actually get a value that's cleaner from Excel as an example. But if you have stuff like this, why not go with it anyway? So I'm gonna use a message box for this one as well. I find that that's just an easy way of showing it. So I'm not sure I'm hitting the buttons here because of the remoting, but it doesn't seem like whatever I'm doing is getting through.
Let me. I'm just gonna close site and pull it back open. There we go.
Yeah. So there you have the clean 12, even though you actually have 6 digits after. So.
And that's where you throw a comma after the last 0 and put a number, and that'll tell you how many decimals. Is that right?
Oh yeah, you're talking about using the second parameter.
Yeah.
So I'm putting it in here.
Yep.
I'm unsure what I can remember. Can you remember what that was? I heard what you said, but
yeah. Oh, now that worked.
Yeah, now that worked.
Sort of.
Yeah, it didn't really work that well apparently, but it's not responding. Something is clearly interfering with how your computer normally works.
Yep.
It might be a little too heavy on it to actually share all of this. Who knows? Whatever it is.
But I'm pretty sure if you just come back over here, let's put 2. All right, 2. Yeah, there's something weird going on. Let's well, I'll go back into it just because it's here. Yep. So now it's showing the 2.
Yeah. Okay. So it ain't telling you how many digits, but you are telling how many digits you want to keep by using that. Yeah, absolutely. That was also what I thought it was doing. Yeah. So. Yeah, I'm just getting a few questions in the chat here. Yeah, and our idea is to actually focus on functions, or doing some light focus on functions at least.
Yeah, initially the plan is here. We're going over a couple built-in, how to use a built-in function, right? Really, I think where we're going to get some good value to you guys is creating your own custom functions if you're not currently doing that. And then after that, we're going to talk about using DLL calls, which just takes that to the next level.
Yeah. Yeah, we are trying to kind of hit everybody from low level to high level with something that might be interesting so starting low and building up until something that might be a little more interesting. For people that have been using AutoHotkey for longer.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Do you want to go ahead and start working on the personal custom function?
Yeah, I must say I would have loved to actually have been ready to kind of set everything, have a plan, but I haven't had any time lately, so I'll just simply wing it. Let's go and put in a few of these simple startup stuff, just whatever I'd normally use myself. I'd probably have these in here just to kind of make sure that even though I don't have a hotkey or anything in there, the script would keep running if I wished for that, and the single instance will make sure that I don't need to keep going to the tray and closing it and stuff when I
you don't start multiple instances.
Yeah, exactly. So whatever, let's try and make a function for setup. It's quite a simple one. So if we keep with that, now I've made a function call here for a function that's called setup, but I need to define something for this call. So I'm gonna, sorry, I missed one there. Like so. These keys that I'm pressing, they don't get through too well to your end, Joe, but
you want me just to share your screen instead?
Yeah, we can do that. Let's try and do that.
Okay. So stop and oh no, I don't want to share. I want to manage participants, I think.
Yeah, we are viewing you now, Joe, but can't say whatever we need to actually click to make it switch over.
I made you the co-host. Does that allow you to share your screen? Oh, you know what it was? Or can you share your screen now? Is that what you?
I don't seem to have that ability.
I know we've done it before.
No. Yeah. There, I have a button here for sharing my screen.
Okay.
So if I try that, I'll try and share that part there. Okay. So that's.
Yep.
Yeah. Let's go with that. Let's take this one over here.
Can you zoom in when you're done?
Yeah, I will. I'll close all of these ones here.
All the 30 different tabs you have open?
Yeah, working on a lot of projects at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you want me to zoom in a little here. So like so, I'll do the same thing as I just did. Let's go with that and that one there. And setup one without any parameters, because if we're doing a simple setup, this will actually work just as if it was a normal subroutine or a label, as I'm not actively passing anything in. So what we'll get by this when I define it here is that in here, we'll now be able to set up whatever I wish to. But if I wanted to use it as, let's say, setting up some global variables, I could simply ask or say that it should be global. So now everything in here will actually be in the global scope. So it would work just as if it was an actual label. So if I wanted to have a variable here, some type of variable 1 with a value of some kind, a string maybe, like so. Now with the global here, I'd actually be able to access that up here when I run it. So now if I do a message box and I try to view the contents of the variable 1, I'd actually be able to do that. So if I now say this, again, I'll go with the test/1. you'll be able to see that I had put a string in there. If I had not had this global here, this would stay inside the function setup. So this variable up here would appear blank or empty, and nothing would actually be shown when I did the message box.
Yeah,
That's what you can see there.
And I think one more is, why don't you, instead of deleting it from there, or actually I still want it moved from there, but put it somewhere else.
You want the variable to be somewhere else?
Well, I'm just saying, you just demonstrated how you can set up a global variable to access outside of your function. But what I'm saying is, what I get caught up on is forgetting that inside the function, unless your variable is global, you can't access it, right?
Oh, so you want a variable, let's say 2 outside here.
Right.
This is what's normally called the global scope out here. So this is accessible by subroutines. So let's say go sub, whatever we are going to call it. We're going to call it, I don't know, sub1. So if I had a subroutine and I called that one sub1 here, and I return it like so. In here, when I hit this line, the flow of the script would actually jump to this one here, do whatever I put there, and then return to this line or the line after it, how you want to see it. That's how it normally works. So this is accessible here. So message box and variable underscore true. So now this can be seen here, but in here, if I put in, let's say, a message box in here and kept that one as variable 2 as well, then I wouldn't be able to actually see the value in here. So let's give this the value string 2. It's some very simple fillings, but if I now remove, just to kind of clear everything up, I remove this and then remove that. I shouldn't remove the last part, of course. And I actually also need to keep it here to kind of keep showing whatever actually is happening. So here we have, just to kind of follow the flow, message box between
calls,
sub
yeah,
and function calls. Yeah. So let's kind of see that in action here. So first we have the string 2. That's the flow of script coming here, then hitting this goes up 1, then being down here, now showing the variable 2 here. And now we'll actually see the message box as the next thing when I click OK. Message box between sub and function calls. Okay, and then we'll again see the variable 2 here because we're now calling the setup, or so it would seem. But that's not what's happening, because within the setup function, we're now in local scope. So only if the variable had been actively accessible in here, had been set up, or if this function had been set up to being global, had we been able to actually view the contents of variable 2. So that's kind of where you have the big difference between the subroutines and the functions, is that the subroutine, it keeps everything in the global scope. So whatever you do anywhere outside of functions will be accessible within a label, like this one, subroutine here. But if you do stuff in a function, like the one in setup here, you won't be able to access it. if you don't set it up to be accessible. So what we could do, yeah, let me hear it, Joe.
No, I was going to say was next one I would do, unless you got something better, is add a parameter and show how a parameter can get passed to the function. Is that to me,
so
one of the really great values of why I create functions?
Yeah. Let's put in a param1 here. And if instead of actually having the message box for the variable 2, we have a message box for what's now passed, the parameter 1. And if we up here in the setup pass the variable 2, like so, we'd now be able to actually see the value of variable 2 in here. Does that make sense to you, Joe?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what I'm going to do
at some point to include the by-ref stuff as well, which is another good value add to mention. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So now I cleaned off a bit of what was there, but now you'll see you're going to pass this as the first parameter, the one here, and I'll actually also remove the variable 1. We don't need it. So now you'll be able to actually see string 2 because you have actually passed the value of variable 2 into the function.
Which, by the way, when you're new at functions, and even when I look at this now, for a second there, I get a little confused because in my mind, line 6, where it says variable _2, I feel like, hey, that's not param1, right? You know what I mean? On line 10.
I kind of feel where you're coming from with that. And of course, the 2 might be kind of confusing, but it simply depends on how you learn it or how you view it.
Once you get used to understanding, it's just a placeholder, right, for what you're passing. Then it
exactly, and it doesn't even need to be named parameter 1. It could just be value, and then this would be value. So it's just the name or whatever I want to have the first parameter to have within the function. So only within the function's scope can we have this. I could have something else out here actually have the name value, and it could also hold the value, and it wouldn't interfere in any way with whatever is inside the function. So this would still show the value of variable 2. So I can't see the chat, so if stuff is going on over there, please tell me.
Yeah, they were just bringing up other, having optional parameters and other things. And I was just saying, everything is valid, right? It's all great stuff. Functions we could spend easily an hour, more talking about. But we also don't want to bore. We know a lot of you guys have used functions for a long time. So this was like hey, here's what's cool about functions. Here's some of the intro stuff. But because it was all related, that's what we want to get at some point here to the DLL call. So just don't expect us to explain every little nitty bitty. What would be awesome though is keep making your cheat sheets of the cool stuff that you like, and we will that I can go through later and add them to the notes that we'll send out after the webinar of things to go added resources.
Yeah, and also as you had that survey you passed to people in the chat, and it also lets or asks people if they want to present something sometime, and if they have something that they value enough, might be one way to put it. Actually asking for some screen time, you're very welcome to let us know everything you want to tell us about either functions or regex or whatever you feel like. We're very eager to hear it. That's at least what I feel.
Well, the other thing I would just say is to demonstrate, especially if someone's new to functions, is just show how you would save that into a variable. what's returned.
You mean how I would return something?
Return something and save it into a variable, yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna change this up and do what most people have probably seen at some point in the manual, is do an add function. I feel that is as simple as it gets, and still one that makes a lot of sense. So here we'll have, let's say I'm defining this one. We'll have two numbers. We'll have number 1, and for the second parameter we'll have a number 2. And in here we'll then have an expression. Let's say we'll have a sum, and in the sum we'll add these two numbers together. So num1 plus num2. So now we're adding those into the variables sum. And to return that, to kind of get it back from where we called it out into the global space, we can return it. So we'll return sum like this. So now this call up here, I can use that to add numbers together. And to do that, I'll say value next to, oh, sorry. And then in here, I could either use variables that hold some kind of number, or I can simply type in numbers. So I'll type in some numbers here. Let's go with those. And now most people can probably add those together and know what's in value, but still, we'll still show it here with a message box. So value of this adding here will now be shown here. So this line here is returning the sum of these two numbers and putting them in the variable value. And this is then showing that. So let's try and do that. And there you have it, 55. That seems about right, at least from my math. So that's a simple way to return something from a function. And that's one of the most used ways, I'd say, at least when I look at functions.
To hammer one more point home, if on line 6 you had done a message box saying display num1 and num2, right, for the variables, like nothing comes back because those aren't global variables. Those are done inside that function, and they're not accessible.
Yeah. This one, as an example, that would be a complete empty message box because this variable, as you said yourself, it's only local and accessible within here. I could have passed that one back instead, which was allowed to do that. But then this wouldn't be num1, this would be value still, as it's what's passed from the add to the value, or returned, might be a way to put it. So now you actually see the number 22, because 22 is put in num1, and num1 is returned and put in value, and that is what we're showing.
Actually, do me this last favor here. Change it back to num1 there. Where you had it. Yep. And on line 4, on line 4, set num1 to equal to 100.
Can I set it to 1, then?
Yeah, but add back the 1 and the, there you go. Yeah. So this is what, to me, like really, when you don't understand functions, it gets confusing.
Yeah, so num1 here will now hold 11. And that's what will be shown, because num1 here will only exist within here, and to have the number 22 actually show, we'll still need to use value. Like so, 22. Do people have anything to add to that, or?
One question was just explaining how you're using the single % sign for your message box instead of the double.
How I'm using it like this, and then this one here for the first parameter by using a single parentheses, and it's, as you can see, it's alone. It's surrounded by white space. This will force this one parameter, the first parameter of message box, to be an expression. And because message box is set up to be smart, I think it's called, it tries to anticipate what you are passing here in the first value here. It actually shows it as the text. The text is it. So this doesn't really matter. I could surround it normally like this, and we'd see the same thing. But by doing it this way, I'd actually be allowed to do math here, right here, because it's an expression. Or I'd be able to use a function call at this place. So I could actually remove the entire return part here and do the function right there, because this here is an expression because of this single standing percentages here. Does that answer it, you think?
Yeah. It for me, it also, once you get used to using it, it reads, it's just easier for me to read the text with the single percents and the double, and it's like a shorthand kind of way to do it.
Yeah, it is. It is kind of a short way of doing it, and you get so used to having the power of expressions wherever you are, so you just start using it more and more as you get used to how expressions work. So it's the same thing with actually here. If I was just putting in some text, you could normally do this way with the message box, and we would just see some text. But because you get used to passing the stuff to functions and using it in expressions, you normally put these quotes around literal strings. Oh, that's hard for me to say. So around strings, you would put that, but this would then be interpreted like that. So if you view it like this, you'll actually get the quotes there. But if I force, let me hear it.
No, I was going to say is one of this, you know, if I haven't had my coffee in the morning, I often forget to add the % sign, and I'll do something and I put up a message box of course, the name of the variable instead of the using it to force it to an expression. Of course, you know instantly when you see it, you're like, duh. But it is something I still do a lot, just when I'm half asleep.
Yeah.
Let's get on to the DLL call, because I think it's still in the same topical area, right, overall, but be interesting.
Yeah, it's fair enough. Let's look at that as well. So I kind of picked something just to have something to go with for this del call, and because I might not be the absolute authority on del calls, that's just me putting it somewhere at least. But I've used them, but
I was going to say, if anybody is on the webinar that is, you know, awesome at DLL calls, we'd love to know about it.
Yeah. I have no prior programming knowledge from actually learning AutoHotkey, and I have no schooling whatsoever. So I know what I know from what I've learned since I actually started using AutoHotkey. So let's keep that in mind at least. So what I was going for was what I felt to be a fairly simple DLL call.
Well, I was going to say, why don't you quickly explain what it even is, right, and why it's so awesome?
There's probably a lot of reasons why it's so awesome, but what it truly does is DLL call lets you call functions that are within DELs. And DELs is a file name, so to speak, of, let's see, C++, another programming language, where they would put the functions that another programmer had made inside a DEL, and del call, the command in AutoHotkey, will then allow you to call these functions, these APIs, whatever it might be within Windows or third-hand DLLs for that matter. So it is really powerful because you get access to the functionality of other languages, where normally we might be confined to our own or writing entire new functionality, which we are allowed to kind of skip by having the DEL call accessible to us. That's how I feel about it. Do I have anything to add?
The only thing I'd add to that is, I mean, I view it as like, you know, how I can do stuff with COM, right? It's awesome. I can use AutoHotkey to access a lot of stuff with Microsoft products and other products. But DLL calls just opens up a whole new world where there's so many things out there that you can tap into and use. It's already been written. Now, reading it, that's the tricky part of, if my background in DLLs is I go on the forum, and if someone's written something close, I can change a parameter, it gets passed to it. But starting one from scratch and trying to figure it all out, that's beyond me. So they're difficult because, and that's what Jackie will get into here in a second, is that when you go to read how to fill one out, they're in the other language, right, which is an AutoHotkey language. And so you have to often define your variables and variable type, data types, right, and other things that I'm not used to doing, nor do I like doing. And it's out of my comfort zone. So it's a bit of a steep hill, but boy, if you have the need, it's great because it opens up a ton of different functionality.
Yeah, it does. And if I don't remember wrongly, and I might, because it's actually before I started using AutoHotkey, but the original way that COM was built in was a user who made a user library. The original COM functions that you would access was actually user made. Now they have been built into the latest version of AutoHotkey. So now COM is very, very accessible.
Yeah,
but
so much better.
It was originally built by Sheen, I think it was, who had made it all with DEL calls and whatnot. So it tells us a little about the power of DEL call that was added in, at least, I don't remember, a lot of years ago at least, by Chris. Added it in.
So go ahead and let's get into it real quick.
Yeah, so I don't know exactly how much to go over each and every part, but as you can see on the screen right now, you have a result, and that's whatever is returned by the DEL call. And within the DEL call, you have, as you can see, you have some optional things here. So if the function that you're trying to call, the DEL function, is built into Windows, if it's a native Windows function, you don't need to pass it the entire path to the DEL file, because it will already be loaded within the Windows API. And
so one thing to point out, because you mentioned it earlier too, and I didn't say anything about it, but it's optional because it has the brackets, right?
Yeah, exactly. And also, of course, because I've read about it, and here it would seem a little weird when you just view it like this, that the DEL file would be optional, but the function isn't. And of course, you can read more about that within the help file, but as long as you know that if it's a built-in thing like a message box, which is the thing I'm going to show here, you don't need to actually know the path for the DEL which holds the function. But if you're trying to do it with, let's say, third-party DELs, you would, of course, need to know the entire path. So you could call the correct file and the correct function within the file. That would be my way of putting it.
And correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe, like, the files you see on your computers that in the DLL, right? Those are basically often just text files, more often than not, that are functions, right? A aggregation of functions, maybe, but.
Yeah, there are function definitions. Yeah,
Okay.
just as we would type them out here in AutoHotkey. That's what you'll also file in the DLL calls or in the DL files. So that's often why people with no programming experience at all would look at whatever is in a DEL file and simply think, what is that? It doesn't make any sense because they're simply not used to looking at code. So, but for the most part, it's simple text files. But Windows has been taught, or whatever you'd say, to know that they are system files and try and warn you to not actually do anything with them. And that's probably why most people have some kind of fear of DEL files or reservation or whatever you call that.
All right, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, it's no actual problem. I'm more in a place where I'm like, how much to go into each part, because this part here is, of course, unless I go into the actual call that I'm doing, it might be too much to simply type out and rearrange and stuff. So I'm gonna do message box. That's the idea, at least. So I think it might actually be large M. I'm not sure it actually matters. I can't remember if the case of the function matters. We are not used to actually caring about case within AutoHotkey, but usually you need to.
That's a great point. Yeah.
When doing other languages, we are kind of spoiled when it comes to that. And if we actually look within MSDN or some other place and look up the message box as an example, we would be able to see the parameters that a message box needs. I could probably try and do that. Should I do that? I'm gonna do it. So let's say
wait, Angela Jolie, they're getting divorced. Wait a minute.
Oh. Yeah, interesting. Not at this time, but yeah, I know what you mean. And for the rest of you, that was in Danish, but still, you could probably see. So here you have the message box as it's described on Microsoft's database here. So as you can see, you have these. I'll simply just copy those over here. So like this. So what we are seeing here is a definition of the message box function. So by using del call, we can now access this Win API message box function. And it returns an int or an integer. And I must say, I've not read up today on what an integer is, but it is a pure number. That's my quick take on what, yeah, a whole number without any kinds of, it could actually be signed. It could have a minus.
Yeah, but no digits, right?
No, it shouldn't have any kind of digits after comma, no. So that's the definition of that. So here you have an input, and it's optional, and it's an HWND or a Windows ID. I actually think it's still called ID everywhere in the help file, right? I think the help file calls these the Windows ID.
I don't know, but that's how I understand them. I don't know how they, it's actually documented.
If we take one of these simple ones and open here, and we look, you have Win title, and if we look under Win title, you can see you have different ones here. You have the HKID, which is a unique ID, HWND. So that's how it's explained within the help file. And the unique ID is what a window normally has. And how Windows or Microsoft's put it is HWND. That's just the ID of the window. Let's not use more time on that specific one. It should be able to be looked up within the Helm file what you need to pass. Let's remove that. So that's the first parameter. So we need to put in an HWND here. And to me, I remember these WNDs as being an unsigned integer, because it normally is an unsigned integer. So we can pass that in. So like so. And as we don't have one, did I close this down? I did. I had it over here. So here you have a handle to the owner window, but we don't really have an owner window, or we could say that the AutoHotkey window was the owner window. But we don't need to pass it in because it's optional. So we'll simply pass it a 0 to not tell it an owner, because we don't need to have it owned by any window. It will still be owned by the AutoHotkey process if I remember correctly. And then you have here another optional input, and it's an LPCT string, and it's the text of the message box. So whatever we want to pass, but here an LPCT string that can be expressed as a string within AutoHotkey when you pass it to this. And we could go way more into the types of all of these, but I don't think we actually have time to go into all of these types, because that's an enormous topic, and I don't have the true deep knowledge of actually teaching everybody whatever you need to know to be able to to easily just use types. Well, that's one way to put it.
Yeah, I think it gets down to, which is what we discussed when we talked about why, should we talk about DLL calls, is it's very specific depending on the DLL call, right? And we can outline this one, but we really got to study what DLL call you're looking at and all the different things about it, and that's why it's quite involving.
Yeah, it truly is, and I'm simply just trying to talk through one, and it's taking quite some time. But if I am to go into every little bit of it, I think we need to make a webinar that's only about DLL calls, where we don't go into functions first. And if there is a need for that, I'm sure we'll do one, right, Joe?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this was the text, and to put in some text here, we can put in, I don't remember, but I'm putting in a string, and here we are within a function. So now to actually pass strings, we need to put these quotes around it. And to these parameter types, I am actually pretty sure you don't need to pass them, as this one function will actually accept them this way. But for consistency, I'll keep them there because you're allowed to do both. So now we'll have a message box which shows string as the text, and again for the next parameter. So as you can see, the parameters even seem to be 2 parameters wide. Can you see that? So if I do like so, just kind of extending this to make a little bit more looking almost the same, like so. Can you see that? So this, from that comma until this comma, is actually just this information here. And would be the same for the next one. So the input optional, and then it would be an LPCT string, that's the one there, that's the string. And then the LP text, that would be this one here, like so. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Stu was asking why we have the UINT at the start. That was the integer, right? One.
This one?
Yeah.
The unsigned integer.
Unsigned integer.
It was my belief that the Windows ID was an unsigned integer. I might be wrong, but it was my hope that I was correct. And I don't think that it is so wrong that it won't work, at least.
Yeah, let's finish it up and get it working, and then
yeah, exactly. And we have one more string here, comes from here, the LPCT string, and that's the captation. So that's the title of the message box. I typed that wrong. Like so. And then you have this last one, which isn't actually optional, but it is telling us the correct type. So that one is quite easy. So we can put that one in there. And then to get the U type, what I do, I think, would be to go to the actual message box here within the help file, as it has this nice overview of decimal values and hex values. And as we need to pass the hex values to get some specific functionality, we can get that from here. So if we want a message box with an OK button and a cancel button, we'll use the hex value 1, like so. And if we want more functionality, we could also find that here. What?
No, you're good. Yeah.
Anything? Okay. So that's at least one way to find what you want. You could also find it on MSDN or wherever you are used to looking for Windows function values. Might be the correct way of saying it. So this, let's see if it works. Do you want to see if it works, Joe?
Yeah. Let's give it a whirl.
Now this result will also have the result of whatever is clicked on the message box. So we'll use a built-in one. That's a lot easier, as you can see, than typing all of this, but this was an example. So after our del call message box, we'll have a message box that shows the result of what we actually did. Let's see if this works.
Yeah.
It did. So hey, we have a message box. It has title as the title, and it has string as the text. So that worked, and that worked. And we have an OK, and here it's in Danish, but it's a cancel button. So, and now when I click one of these, we'll get a number stored here in result. So we'll see that next. So if I click OK, we'll get a 1. And if let's say we do it one more time, and I click cancel instead, we'll get a 2.
Cool.
So
obviously, this example isn't to say, here's how you should build message boxes, right? It's to help understand, hey, when there's a function, something you want to do that isn't built into AutoHotkey, but already exists in a DLL call, you can actually call it using AutoHotkey. You just have to do some homework of understanding the right parameters to pass to that function.
Exactly. That is the idea of it. So the del call is quite powerful, and we could have taken something that wasn't already built into AutoHotkey like this and shown that. But for this one, I felt that the parameters it needed and the results you got back was okay for this first go at showing something with del calls.
Cool.
Have you seen any kind of input from the chat or anything?
There was a lot going back. I mean, people were helping out, answering other people. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So it's enough. I mean, people that were asking questions, I think they got the answers to their questions already. Is where I'm gonna summarize it as.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I actually think that we're over the 1 hour mark,
Yep.
so I want to just continue on.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing I was going to share, which is it's a silly script. Let me get back the Yeah, all right. I think if I start sharing my screen, it's going to cancel yours out. And let me see if I pull it up. I think I had it in memory here. So this is just one, and it's built into my main one. But let me pause it there. So. Spend hotkeys. If you guys can see my screen? Yeah.
I'm seeing it at least. Yeah.
Okay. So let's say I'm on a website somewhere, and there's a page. Here we go. We'll go here, and there's rich text. It doesn't matter really where you are, but let's say you're grabbing something, and there's a lot of rich text, and you don't actually want all the stuff. If I hit paste, of course it brings all the formatting, right? But on my computer, and let me actually run this script. So now it's running. Now if I hit Control-G, it will strip out all the formatting. And so it just brings in just the plain text. But I can hit undo, and I can just hit Control-V if it didn't actually delete the clipboard. And that was a little bit in here. So the Control-G is what triggers it. Basically, I store the clipboard all, which is what has the rich text format, in a variable called store. And then this simple thing here converts what's in the clipboard, and I know it looks crazy, at least it did to me, but it reduces it down to plain text. And then it just sends the input out. This is where, depending on what window you're in and how your settings are in Windows, you might try a different send event type thing, or send event. I use send input. It works pretty reliably. And then I go back and restore the clipboard to the original thing.
Yeah, what I usually see, or what I'm seeing a lot of on all of the old forums and whatnot, is that the line 5 you have, where you have the clipboard and you have the colon equal and then clipboard again. What I often see is using the old functionality of just having the equal sign there, and then surrounding the clipboard with percentages.
Yeah, I've seen that too. Yeah,
as that gives the same functionality, but it for some it might seem clearer what it's actually doing. I don't know. But that's how I saw it the first many times, at least. But
like that.
Yeah, but without the colon equal sign, just the equal sign.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I don't remember it being that way, but I do recall seeing this way, so I'm sure at one point I saw that.
Yeah, it's the first way I saw it looking, and some might feel that it was clear what it was doing, but it depends on how used to expressions you are. If you're used to expressions, it doesn't really look that bad, but if you're not, this might be a clearer way of expressing it. I don't know.
So this one, I can't tell you how many times a day I use this, and it was actually one of the first things of why I started using AutoHotkey was I was trying to. It was really ridiculous. I'd have to go into basically take what I had, go to Notepad, paste, select it again, cut it, and then go paste it somewhere else, right? And now I even have it where it keeps the clipboard in memory, so I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, I remember so vividly doing that with going to Notepad, pasting it in, and making whatever.
Yeah.
Even though I haven't done it for, I don't recall how long now, but even then, I know that I must have done it so many times to still remember it so clearly. So yeah, it is a really nice one to have.
Yeah, especially, people who use Word would know I could come up here and say paste special, right, and strip out the formatting. But not every program has that.
No, and it isn't even doing it the same way.
Yeah, fair enough. And actually, so that's an interesting one. Is I made it. I don't have it built in, but when you try to do the same thing in PowerPoint, PowerPoint tries to be smart and keep the format of what you have. I think of the template, but you can tell it a way to say no, paste the actual, like here I had to paste the rich text format, but it kept trying to put it in as this way. And so I had to tell it to paste it a different way. But I had a hotkey at the time when I did a lot of stuff in PowerPoint. Thank God I don't do that anymore. That automatically did that for me.
Yeah. Again, we all get used to having all of these, and that's one of the things with our hotkey and probably other scripting languages as well. But the individual power that it gives us, this little thing that only is useful to us. It's amazing. It truly is.
All right. Well, let's I'll do something crazy here, and I'm gonna and I got to remember how to do this, but I'm gonna change it to where I'm gonna allow people to now unmute themselves, and or raise your hand if you don't feel like talking.
Yeah. Joe, how about the recording? Are you gonna do those in 2 again?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good idea. So I'll stop it.